I usually come here every time I come to put a display up. And I've done
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
in the past. A lot of, I mean, you know, I've told Claude, I said, if I come back in November, I'll probably do a World War I display. I mean, I've got uniforms, I've got so much stuff from World War I. Probably
What got you started collecting?
I started collecting when I was about 12 years old. I started collecting patches, and then I got into it and just was coming crazy with it. Just everything. I collected Civil War, World War, World War I. World War II I was mostly into because all my uncles and fathers were all in World War II. And then I got into that. But I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm an Air Force veteran, Vietnam veteran. And 4 years active duty, I got out and I went back in the Guard at Pittsburgh. I put in 21 years in the Air Force in Pittsburgh, and plus I worked my civilian job.
Did you enlist back in the Vietnam time, or were you drafted?
Yeah, no, I enlisted. To join the Air Force, you didn't get drafted. You drafted, you went to the Army.
Right.
And I didn't want to go. My dad was in the infantry in World War II, and I mean, my uncle in the Air Force, my other brothers were in the Air Force, and I liked airplanes. I mean, I ended up in Vietnam. I got shot at, but my job was taking. I was crawling around the chunk. My job was taking care of the aircraft and keeping flying.
Right. So. Well, do you want to walk us through some of your display here? Yeah, I mean,
what everything is comprised of. This is the 20th Air Force. The 20th Air Force was the biggest Air Force in World War II. They were the last Air Force that was formed, and they basically they flew the B-29 Super Fortress, and the 20th. Which
is this in the picture?
That's down there in the poster. That's a B-29, and the 20th, like I said, they flew B-29s, and the 20th was comprised of the 58th Bomb Wing, 73rd Bomb Wing, 313th, 314th, 315th, 316th Bomb Wings, and the 509th Composite Group was also included in here. They were the atomic bomb guys. Yeah. And the first B-29s flew out of China first because the Japanese still controlled some of the islands like Saipan and Tinian and Guam. So they couldn't do anything, so they flew out of China. Stopped flying out of China because all the supplies had to come over the Himalayas. So after we obtained Saipan and Tinian and Guam, we put air bases there. And then the 58th moved to Saipan because it was closer to Japan, but it was still a long flight to Japan. They had almost 15-hour flights to fly to Japan, but it was over water.
One way.
Yeah. And it was a long flight and everything else. And but that's what they did. They bombed Japan, and then when they took the other islands, like even when the Marines took Iwo Jima, that helped a lot because they were using it as a stepping stone. A lot of crippled planes were flying back, and they could land on Iwo instead of landing in the ocean and crashing and everything. Quite a few of them landed on the island when they were still fighting the Japanese. So they flew off of Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, and then and then the atomic bomb crews were, like I said, they were based out of there also. But years ago, I had a brother, my brother Andy, his father-in-law, was in the 73rd Bomb Wing. And years ago, I obtained one of his address listings when they would have reunions. And I said, let me have that address listing. And I started writing all these guys. Yeah. So then it just skyrocketed. I got address listings from the other bomb groups, and some of the other guys gave me from the 58th, the 313th.
So each one of these
every
folders,
one of those albums is filled with autographed pictures and memorabilia, and the stories from all the pilots, gunners, ground crew, everything they did in that war. A lot of this stuff has never been. I could probably write 5 books on what's in there. Right. And a lot of guys sent me their personal stuff. They wrote stories, and all this stuff is just. And there's a lot of memorabilia in here. There's photographs. They autographed everything for me, and pictures that are signed.
So is each individual folder
every one of these is
about
this is
a particular plane?
It's a 73rd Bomb Wing. They're all in albums, but the guys I put their names in are the guys I did hear from, and they're listed alphabetically. Okay. So, I mean, these guys are probably all gone now. But, I mean, at times I corresponded with some guys I talked to on the phone, some guys I met in person. But they shared all their memories with me, and all this stuff is, like I said, it's letters from them describing their missions, what they went through, their aircraft they flew on.
How many hours do you think you put into this?
Well, you know what? This stuff sat for quite a while, and I didn't have time to work on it. Then with the COVID, I said, you know what? I better put this stuff together.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I'm going to do this because I got to finish it. Yeah. And it laid in boxes for probably 20-something years. And I said, I got to put all this stuff together. And that's what I did. I finally got all the bomb wings together and everything together, and it works out. And like I said, a lot of guys. I mean, there's so much to go to, and some of this stuff I probably even haven't. I haven't even read all of it myself. You know, I mean, not word for word, but there's so much in here. You know, personal stuff. They sent me their patches, their wings, and some guys were in China. That's a blood chip that they wore on the back. If they got shot down, they wore them on the back of their jacket so the Chinese would see that. And there's just so much. There's just so much history here. You know.
Have you been approached by a museum to say, hey?
You probably could, yeah, because they do have museums. I was in Connecticut. I have relatives there, and in Bradley Field near Hartford, there's the 58th bomb group has one hangar. They have a B-29 in a hangar. It's a static display one, and it's all refurbished. And they have a lot of their items, a lot of their stuff. The guys donated. It's in that museum.
Yeah,
and there's different museums. I know. In Arizona, the Premier Museum has a B-29 out there. Different places have different museums. So,
right.
So what I'm going to do with it, I don't know. My son knows about it. He's already, you know, I'm leaving all this to my son. But it's all here. And this is the atomic bomb cruise. Like I said, I wrote some of these guys I met personally, and some of them called me on the co-pilot on the Nagasaki mission. He sent me quite a bit of stuff. I talked to him personally. In a phone, he called me, and I met him personally. And
well, I bet it was very interesting talking with him.
These guys, these guys are just—they're all gone now. But
they're
spread there. See, everything is signed to Tech Sergeant Janicki. When and so many of these guys I heard from, and then some sent me. I even have autographed books. These are autographed by Paul Tibbets. And they're signed to me, you know, the Tech Sergeant, to Rich Janicki, Tech Sergeant, best wishes, and Sweeney. These are all signed, and some guys sent me their personal photographs, and these are all in the Ozark. That's when they painted the girls from the calendars on the planes. But
yeah,
I think the 20th, all the other Air Forces had Ozark, but the 20th had the best Ozark. I think they had the best looking women. Some of it was pretty risque, but they painted anything they wanted on there.
Yeah. And they just let them do that.
Well, they did because it was a war zone. They brought them back to the States. They said, you got to take some of that off of there.
Yeah,
you know?
probably. You can't like run this around.
Yeah, and some of them they changed. I know this one here. The guy told me when they painted that Peace on Earth, they had the peace was spelled P-I-E-C. And they said you can't put, so you had to change it to P-A-C.
Yeah.
So one of the guys told me that, you know, he said, yeah, we had that plane. We couldn't put that. We had to change the wording on it. But, and then these are silk escape maps. When they had survival vests they wore, if they got shot down, they would use, they could use these maps to get their way out of country.
Right.
And, in fact, one of the guys over there, he sent me a whole album, Jack Helper. He got shot down in China. And his album is over here. And, it tells how he got shot down, and there's his crew and his plane, and all about his missions. And in fact, he got a Chinese guy when he was escaping. A Chinese guy gave him this hat to wear.
Wow.
So it's one of them little Chinese beanies, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
But he.
That's a lot of trust that these veterans are putting in you.
Well, you know, they knew that I was going to. You know, what are they going to, guys? What am I going to do with this stuff? Can you pass it on? And that's what I hope I can do with it and stuff. Right. And some guys even gave me their medals.
Yeah, so
you know,
distinguished flying. Some of these.
Well, that's Distinguished Flying Cross, an Air Medal. There's a Purple Heart. There's a Silver Star, and then there's wings. There's like gunner's wings and stuff. And then this is chaff that they threw out. This guy marked on it. He said it was for, but this was thrown out of the aircraft to jam radar. It's like aluminum foil. It's called chaff.
And it would unspool.
Yeah, and it would spool out, and we still use them. When I was in the Air Force, when I was at the guard base at Pittsburgh, and we had fighter jets I worked on. We had chaff dispensers that fit in the bottom of the plane, chaff and flare. And they would fire those, the chaff and the flares, because if they got a missile coming at them, the chaff would jam the radar, and the flares, instead of the missile going after the aircraft, the tailpipe would go after the hot flares and blow up.
Yeah.
But they used it back in World War II also. They threw it out of the B-29s.
Right.
And then it's just
the
gunner's identification cards for the gunners to identify airplanes so they can shoot down.
Wow.
But that's what those are. There's all kinds of them. And then that's a 50 caliber round. That's what the gunners, that's what they used on the B-29, 50 caliber machine guns. And then they had flak helmets. These are flak helmets, and they were getting hit with anti-aircraft fire, they would put these helmets on to protect themselves.
Yeah.
See, there are flight helmets underneath here. There
Right.
was just different types of black helmets. So then one thing about the B-29, it had a pressurized cabin. I mean, they didn't have to wear, like in the other bombers, they had to wear heavy sheepskin jackets, electric suits, but that you had a controlled atmosphere in that plane. So they were able to wear, they would just wear a summer flight suit. But in case they did get loose pressure, they could still go to oxygen, which they had oxygen masks. And Jap Frey's book here, in case, some of these guys did get shot down with prisoners of war.
Right.
One guy wrote a book back there. He sent me a copy of this book. And then they wore their life preservers. That's their May West. And then flight suits here, just the different styles of flight. These are more like a tropical flight suit that they wore, cruise wore.
And Todd said that this is 1/50th of your collection.
Well, yeah, this is just part. This is. I wanted to bring this in because I finished it. And I said, let me at least bring this in. But I mean, I wrote all the American fighter races from World War also, from World War II. I have 10 albums filled with American World War I, World War II, Korean War aces, all Americans, Navy pilots, Marine pilots, Air Force pilots, Army Air Force, and then I got all the Doolittle Raiders. I wrote to Doolittle himself,
right?
And I just got autograph collections unbelievable.
This is incredible, Rich. Thank you so much for walking us through it. Enjoy the event.
Seven Oaks Country Club in 1 year, 9 months, 1 week, and 4 days. It's good to be back together again. Well, yeah, where have you been? I keep showing up here first Wednesday of the month and nobody's here. My name is Todd. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. We have been getting together here for years, every other month, beginning in April. And of course, we couldn't last year and most of this year, but it is great to be back.
How are we doing on audio, Ellie?
We have a nice big crowd.
Sounding really good.
With 6th graders from Dutch Ridge Elementary School. They couldn't make it today. They're hoping to make it maybe next time we meet. But we always like to begin with the national anthem. Lee Corfield, who usually leads us in the national anthem, couldn't make it today because of a doctor's appointment. So Rachel Bennett, you volunteered, right? No, okay. Quinn Gannon, no, Eric. Who do we have? Because you could volunteer or you could be drafted. Does anybody sing? Jerry, Air Force veteran Jerry. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Oh, say, can you see our early light? Was so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, with the stripes and bright stars, through the perilous sky. O'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red there, bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the dawn that our flag was still there. Oh, say has that star-spangled banner yet over the land of the free, and the home of the brave.
Be seated. Thank you very much. So somebody asked me a few moments ago, so what the heck have you been doing for the past year and 9 months? If you haven't been having breakfast, we've been holding our events online, on Zoom. We started on March 25th last year, March 25th, 2020. We had a town hall on Zoom, and about 350 people showed up, and it was great. I thought that we were gonna do, like, talk about the pandemic, COVID. Everybody just was saying hi to each other and then wanted to share stories. So we went like 2.5 hours and realized, oh, we could do this online. And we've been doing these events online every week. We've done 213 of them since March 2020. Some days we do them 4 days a week. During the summer, we drop down to one night a week. We just had one last night called Greatest Generation Live. We had one the night before with 2 World War II veterans, both Omaha Beach D-Day veterans, both 98 years old, shared their stories. It's been terrific. And I do want to invite anybody. I mean, the horrible thing about this is only about half, probably not even half, the people who attend in person have been willing and able to join us online. But the good part is we've had about 1,500 people from around the country and even around the world join us. And that has been so cool to talk to these veterans from all over and get their stories and kind of get to know people, even though it's here on this, crazy Zoom setup. Hey, you can see Ed Blank right here. Look at you, Ed. That's what you look like to me when I see you. And Jack Morrow is right here, and Bob Misbah. We get a nice group, and it's really fascinating. I got to tell you this: if you didn't join us on August 30th, I think you should have, because it was so much fun to talk with 2 Armed Forces Vietnam radio personalities. Both were one was a newsreader, and then one was a disc jockey. Totally fascinating stories. Coming up on October 4th at 7 p.m., we're having these 2 men on. They were 2 Richie boys, and they've been in the news a lot. Apparently 60 Minutes did a segment on them. They were German Jews who immigrated to the U.S. in 1939, 1940, joined the U.S. Army, were trained in counterintelligence, and then went back with the Army to Europe and did counterintelligence work. And what's it called when you interrogate somebody after interrogation? I guess it's interrogation, right? Right after you capture them? Yeah, interrogation. They did, because they spoke the language. When you get old, you start, losing words. You wouldn't know anything about that. Then on October 11th, we're having a program with people in Japan. This is something I had never heard of before we started doing these Zoom programs. We had this author on who wrote a book called Kai-10, and it was about Japanese suicide submarines. We've all heard of kamikazes, but during World War II, the Japanese had suicide submariners also, and they would ram into ships like torpedoes, which I hadn't known about, and they're called Kai-10. So we had the author on last year, and he said, hey, would you want to connect to some family members in Japan of Kai-10 veterans, those who survived or those who were killed in the Kai-10 operations? And so we're doing that with the Kai-10 Museum in Japan. We're doing a special program with them on Monday, October 11th at 7 p.m. There are going to be Japanese people who speak English, kind of telling us about their family members who are these kamikaze submariners. And it's just it works out where they live. It'll be 7 p.m. Monday night where we are. It'll be 9 a.m. Tuesday morning where they are. And they'll be joining us. That should be fun. Here's another thing that I didn't fully know about until we started talking about it on Zoom. Mars operator. What does Mars stand for? The radio? Military auxiliary. Military auxiliary radio system. And these were the radios that were used to communicate long distance from, say, Vietnam back home. And then there were also, this is something else I really didn't know anything about, civilian ham radio operators who would assist back home in passing messages from overseas. What a wonderful service that is. Jerry, yes, Jerry.
Ron, I remember.
You need the mic. Not because you're quiet, it's because they're deaf.
I remember paying $40 for one call back in '74.
Yep.
And it was horrendous because you had to wait to say over for the last person, and it was just, you couldn't even talk to anybody because of the time lapse, but at least you could hear their voice once in a while.
You're fine. You can walk straight.
Same time frame as him in the mid-70s. Our submarine landed in Guam. And a phone call from Guam back to New Mexico was like $20 a minute. And when we made $20 a month. So they told me to go to the Mars station. I went to the Mars station and there was a guy sitting in front of a CD. And I told him where my wife lived, okay? And they set up a link. And I wound up, I would say to the Mars operator, I love you. And he would say, I love you. Somebody in California would pick it up and say, I love you. He called Arizona and they say, I love you. The last guy in the thing would dial the phone and tell my wife, I love you. And then she would repeat it all the way back. And then I would repeat it all. It was a great call.
Yeah, there's a system for very short messages, I think, yes. Hold on, here we go. You stand up, John.
I was stationed in Alaska. I was in the Air Force Base during the earthquake, and so I tried to call home to let my parents know that I was okay, and so I went to the Mars radio station. And like everybody says, when you talk, you have to talk over. When you're done talking, the neat thing about it was the call was went through Barry Goldwater in Arizona. He was an amateur radio.
That's right.
And so he passed me through. He passed me through Pennsylvania and talked back and forth with the parents. I was okay.
Isn't that great? That is a great story, John. Yes, I read that. Senator Barry Goldwater was an amateur ham radio operator, and he volunteered extensively to get messages back home. That's so interesting that he patched you through, John. Thank you for sharing that. Jerry.
Yeah, Todd, I just wanted to mention that a lot of those ham operators back in the States, they got their training in the US Army during World War II. And my uncle was stationed on, what's the island
Up in Alaska,
Adak. Yeah, no, not Adak. Somewhere else. But anyway, when I can remember him telling the story that, the family didn't know where he was, but there was codes.
Yeah, they're good. So, John, did you say you were on ADAP?
No, I was in
Okay. Oh, Fairbanks, okay. Yeah. I watched a YouTube video on ADAP. Oh my gosh. Did anybody here serve on ADAP? I know you served on Shima. You served on ADAP.
I didn't serve on ADAC, I served on the ship that went from Kodiak, Alaska to Dutch Harbor, fish can, catch a can. We used to make that trip up and back. We hauled supplies for the Navy station up there. I guess during the Cold War, we were in 47, 48.
That's right. Yeah, this is Vince Proya. I just met him this morning, World War II vet, Korean War veteran, served in the South Pacific, served 18 years in the Navy. Why didn't you go for 20?
Because Vietnam was coming up, and I didn't want to go again.
Two wars is enough, I guess, huh?
I might not have been here to talk to you.
Exactly. Thank you, Vince. Thank you for coming. Yeah, it's just, so I watched this YouTube video on ADAC. It was once a population of 6,000 people during the Cold War. It's down to 100 people now. 100 people. It is like well, I mean, it's always a barren wasteland, but now it's really, not many people there either. Fascinating, but all the, old military buildings are still there, and there might be a military presence there again. So, I wanted to, Clem, I remember you have a Mars story.
What story?
A story about Mars, about the radio, calling home.
Oh, okay, yes.
As a matter of fact, I think it was about November of '66. Somebody came around to the hospital and asked if we wanted to send a message home. It was somewhere around Thanksgiving that time, because I was at the Air Force Base at one day. I sent a message home, and I was departing Vietnam on December 18th. I got home before the message got home. One story. But if I might add, you're talking about, excuse me, calling home. I was on Wake Island on December 26th. Actually, we crossed the international date line. We left the 25th. We crossed the international date line, emergency landing on Wake Island. Come off the plane, walking on a dirt path. There was a wooden phone booth with a payphone.
What's that?
Yeah, nowadays, what's that? The sign said, call the States, $6.25 a minute. And that was from Wake Island. All this phone booth all had was a wire that went into the trees somewhere, I don't know. Obviously, I didn't call home, but.
Oh, this is so great. Okay. Oh, all right. Then Monday, November 15th, and I'm selecting this one just because I think you might be interested. Because it's, again, something I didn't know. Everybody knows about the 30,000 Americans who left the United States for Canada during the Vietnam War to evade the draft. But did you know there were also 30,000 Canadians, which I didn't know, who came to the United States, joined the US military, and served in Vietnam? What? Good for them. I'm scheduling this program to ask them, why would you do that? You know? Patriotic, yes. I'm so stunned. Absolutely stunned. I mean, these are people who absolutely did not have to go. And they have a very strong Canadian Vietnam Veterans Association in Canada. And we're going to have them on Monday, November 15th at 7 p.m. to talk about their service and about, you know, what it was like to come home. And, you know, I'm interested in this. I wonder how the Canadian people treated them when they came home. Did they keep quiet about it? You know, I'm just very curious about that. So that's going to be Monday, November 15th. And then the following week, we're going to do a program with the USS Hornet, which is an aircraft carrier docked in Alameda, California. And they're going to give us a tour of the aircraft carrier. This is all going to be on Zoom online. So please, you know, join us if you can. I know it's not always easy to join us on Zoom. Sometimes you can watch it. We can simulcast it on Facebook and YouTube. Ben, do you have anything to add to this? You're with us.
I'll jump before that one. I flew with a lot of Canadian instructor pilots and pilot training because all the US pilots, Canadians go to Vietnam. And they came and loved it because they got a whole lot more flying time. So I flew with a lot of Canadian flight instructors. They were good pilots.
Really? So interesting. So interesting. Yeah, we're also going to do a program with Canadian World War II veterans.
Remember, that's all part of the Cold War.
Yep.
Our allies in the
Yep.
Cold War.
Yep.
And then there was something called the domino effect.
Right now. Yeah. So they had an interest in it also. Absolutely. Oh, I want to let you know we have we expanded. Another thing that we did during the pandemic was we expanded our newsletter into a magazine, 32 pages now, put a lot more content, many more stories in it. We have stacks of them out in the lobby. This is how people really find out about us. Please do feel free to take a stack, spread them around, take them to your library or your Legion or VFW or wherever, maybe your VBA chapter. Is there a VBA chapter here in Beaver County? Maybe spread it around there. There's really wonderful stories in there. We also have a new sponsor. And we have Eric and Quinn here. You're with MetaConnect. First of all, thank you so much for sponsoring. Very grateful for that. And second of all, Quinn Gannon, would you be Irish by any chance? Okay, okay. Just a little, okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for your service. And what we wanted to do today is kind of let you know about the healthcare benefits that are out there for veterans. So what we are is the largest independent, that's the key word here, healthcare brokerage in Western PA. We help people get individual, healthcare plans, and we work with every private insurance carrier. So UPMC, Highmark, United Healthcare, all of them. Primarily what we do is help people on Medicare or the Affordable Care Act plans. There are special Medicare Advantage plans out there for veterans where they will actually give you part of your Medicare Part B money back. So you actually save money and they will give you additional benefits like dental and hearing. You'll have the ability to go outside of the VA for other care if you would like. You'll also get transportation. So to either get to the VA or any other hospital doctor's appointment, that would be included. You would also get an over-the-counter allowance where you get a catalog every few months that you could order your toothpaste, Tylenol, pretty much anything that you could get at the drugstore there. And a lot of people aren't aware that there are these specialized plans out there. We just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of all of the benefits that are out there that the carriers are doing. But thank you all for your service.
So if people want to get a hold of you, if they have more questions, you have cards here, you have information they can take away. You also have, what else do you have here? Try to write through it. Tissues, pill boxes, pens, jar opener. Wonderful. Thank you guys. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Quinn, very much for joining us and for sponsoring. We also have Rachel Bennett here. I've spoken with Rachel over the phone several times. First time we've met. You are with Vitalant, and the Veterans Breakfast Club is doing a blood drive with Vitalant. That means for every blood donation that somebody makes and says that they're with the Veterans Breakfast Club, the Veterans Breakfast Club gets $15. Wow. What if, like, we took Rich here? He's got rare blood. Oh man. I mean, drain him. Can we get double? If you take, can you get double from Rich? I mean, keep him alive, but
Hi. How many of you guys have donated blood? I figured it was gonna be. I figured it was gonna be a good number.
I see dollar signs. That's right.
He sees dollar sign, I see units. Oh, you do have to have it. It's dangerous. I love lights. We want to invite you to come in. You come in to any one of our donor centers and make a donation. I have information up here. We are and have been since June in a critical need for blood. We are the second largest collection agency in the United States. This is not just indicative for this area. It is a national crisis. We need your help. And the sweet part is you get that $15 check back to the club. That has been graciously given to us by the Jefferson Regional Foundation and the Blood Science Foundation. So we appreciate them coming up to the plate and helping us to encourage blood donations. Please, I know a lot of you think you are deferred because of being overseas. Those regulations have changed and a lot of you can be reinstated as blood donors. So if you want to see me after the meeting, I can give you some information. There's a toll-free number to call, but we want you back. And I'll add into this that you guys are our core donors, and we need you back. So please don't discount yourself. If you need, I have cards up here to take one. If you want to make an appointment, I can help you do that as well. So thank you very much. Yes.
If you have a rare blood type, will you give them 25 instead of 15?
If I could, I would.
That's right, George. Thank you.
That's a good point. It should be more like 30 though, right?
Yeah.
So please come out and see us. Thank you.
Mary, I'll be right over. I have something to say.
How about a discount on the next breakfast?
I knew that's where he was going. Yeah, no, but seriously, I remember that I had a conversation, several conversations with the people at the Blood Science Foundation.
How's the audio
Who
sounding,
explained to
Ellie?
me how the blood supply
Sounding
works in Western Pennsylvania, which I never understood. He said about 50%, right here, right here, about 50% of the blood that's used in Western Pennsylvania is bought on the open market. And I said, yeah. And I said, like, he said, it's an international market. And I said, is it expensive? He said, like, you wouldn't believe how much a pint of blood costs on the open market. It's so much cheaper to give us $15 for your blood than to buy kind of blood on the open market. And with all our hospitals, Western PA, we use a lot of it. So it really is an issue.
The other thing to add to that is if we're not collecting blood here, because we go to we'll go to the Red Cross, we'll go to smaller independent blood collecting agencies. Unfortunately, if we're not collecting, they are not collecting as well. So we have to import about 40,000 units a year, and we need to see 600 donors every day. So we have a very uphill battle for us. But I know you guys can do it because you're the cream of the crop. You gave of yourselves, and we're just asking for a little bit more. Sorry.
Some already gave blood, truly. Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you very much. Hey, I want to let you know, we do have a trip coming up to the brand new National Museum of the United States Army, which just opened up in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, last November. We're going there overnight on September 30th to October 1st. That is next week. I know Dick McElhaney will be on the trip, and Ben Wright will be there. Bill and Carol Silver will be on the trip also. We still have space. We have about 25 people going. It's a small trip. If you'd like to join us, let me know. Let me know very soon because I'm making final reservations for our stops and whatnot. The information is at every table. And then, okay, I have to give Jerry the mic at this point. Jerry Fisher, Jerry and Lydian are doing their World War II, or I'm sorry, their memorials trip to Washington, D.C. again. Unlike our trip, Jerry and Lydian's is free. Jerry, would you please stand up? Jerry's mad at me because I took his table that he was supposed to use. But do you think this might be your final trip?
This could be it, folks. We're running out of steam. And volunteers to work and people to go. Now we got sort of late advertising this trip because of the COVID nonsense. We wanted to do one in May and couldn't fill a bus. They were restricting it to 24 people on the bus. So I ain't paying for a 54 passenger bus and take 27 or so empty seats to Washington. So we put that one on hold, but we got nearly a bus right now. I think we got about 4 or 5 seats that we can still fill on this trip. So if there's anybody here that hasn't heard about the trip and wants to go on a trip, right there, the boss of the trip. And as I said, this might be the last one. It's just getting difficult. Takes a lot of time. But I'm sure they're aware of the things that he's done. So
It's a great trip though. Yeah, you got it on.
yeah, as a matter of fact, let's see. Buckley went with us once, I think. Over to that. Guy is gone.
Mike.
Mike. And who else? Oh, yeah, Rich back there.
Bill and Carol.
Yeah. Ron Luce is gone.
Yep.
So we think, somebody put it on that email. Yeah, we wrote literally the thousands of people, guys and gals, we take it down there. So how much time was that? I see Larry back there getting his photo ready. The trip's actually started in 2006. It's a little history. A guy named Jim Hills. One kept saying, I'm going to get you down. I'm going to take you down to the memorial. Because it opened in 2004. His dad died, and Jim said. So the light bulb came on with Jim, and he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the bus to the guys down. So he started organizing the bus. I saw a little thing in the paper, and I called him, and I talked to him about it. And of course, all these things, we know take money. He, of course, needed money, so I told him, I said, well, I'll send you a donation.
And then I said, well, look, if you don't go, do I get my money back? There was this dead silence. I said, oh, I'm joking. But then he tells me about expenses. What he said, I'm gonna have a doctor, I'm gonna have a nurse, I'm gonna have this, I'm gonna have that. I said, you got a nurse? He said, no. I said, you do now. I went home from my business that day, and I said to my wife, guess what? You're going to Washington DC. That was like the first week of November of 06. And she came back, she still talks about that trip, but the following February, so Jim called and said, I'm thinking about doing this again. You want to get involved? I said, sure. So we went up to his place in Portopolis and met, I don't know, there was 10 or 12 people there and this group formed. And we got going on these things. And I want to tell you that one person in this room that has been on every bus trip, every single bus trip she has gone on. And then after Jim had to leave the group, they threw the checkbook at me and all the paperwork at her. And she's been doing all the organizing ever since, and that's probably been 6 or 8 years. Yeah, quite a while. But anyhow, things come to an end.
But you have to have served in the military before April 30th, 1975, May of 75.
And end of what they call the end of the Vietnam War, where our cutoff is. Okay. And if we don't fill these 4 seats, I may cheat, and some younger person come along and say, can I go? And I'm going to say, absolutely.
Hear that, Mark? Mike Wilson, he served after 75.
Well, that's how we started. That's how we started taking the Korean vets. Because very early on, there was one or two trips on 5 buses of all World War II veterans. And pretty soon the numbers started thinning, and we were having trouble. And the Korean guys were saying, "What about me?" And I hate to say anybody you don't count. So I said, hold on. So one day I said, take them. Then we made it official. We started taking the Korean era, and same thing brought us into the Vietnam era.
So if you want to go on the trip October 7th from dawn till past dusk, talk to Jerry or Lydia. If you need their number, contact me. I can put you in contact with them. Jerry and Lydia are also doing a trip to Pearl Harbor for December 7th. And several of you are going on that trip. Judy, who I just met, is going on it. My daughter Ellie is going on it. And I think you have about 30 people, correct?
We're at about 30. We might have 2 or 4 more.
Robert Buckley's going on it. And his son Scott.
Actually, we've had to change this thing to the Buckley trip because there's 8 of them from that family going.
And Jerry, you know how devoted Jerry is to veterans, especially veterans from Beaver County. Jerry is the one who told me about this man, Second Lieutenant Louis Mosliner, who was killed on December 7th, 1941 at Hickam Field. And he was killed immediately after the first bomb was dropped at Hickam Field. He may have been the first casualty of all of World War II, and he was from Monaca. There's a likelihood that a 17-year-old was shot with a bullet right to the heart. I can't remember the ship he was on before Mosliner was killed, maybe 30 seconds later or 20 seconds later. But he was absolutely one of the first. He was 23 years old. He had gone to Carnegie Tech University. He was a graduate, as I said, of Monaca High School. And Jerry has taken upon himself to remember him every December 7th. You've been going to, I believe, the cemetery, which is here, right? What cemetery is it? Beaver Cemetery. And paying tribute to Louis every December 7th at shortly before 8 o'clock. And I'm sorry, yeah, shortly before 8 o'clock Hawaii time, so it'd be like 1 p.m. or so, 12:55 our time. And so I did a little reading. Jerry told me about him, and I got very intrigued by him and his story. Here he is, a hero of Pearl Harbor. He was back during World War II. Candy would often come with a card of somebody who had been killed in the war. This card is from 1942. So he was in a candy box, kind of like a bubblegum card, but they were servicemen who had been killed in the war. And he was on a really interesting and important mission, it turns out. He was part of the 88th Reconnaissance Squadron, which was scheduled to do reconnaissance of the Japanese Mandate Islands. If you remember, after World War I, Japan was given essentially former German colonies in the South Pacific. The Japanese called them the Japanese Mandate Islands. They moved those islands, the Marshall Islands, the Caroline Islands, Gilbert Islands, Palau, Saipan, Truk. All those islands were then formed as very early on part of the new Japanese Empire in 1919. And Japan left them alone for a long time. But then in the late 30s, they closed these islands off to outsiders. Nobody was allowed to fly over it or go into them. And they clearly started moving people out and moving military equipment on these islands, building bases. But we had no idea what their capability was. In November 1941, it looked like war was going to come with Japan. There was increasing traffic communication with the Japanese Navy, that there was a lot of movement, mainly toward the Philippines. And so there was clearly a sign that the Japanese were up to something. And so Lewis here, Mosliner, was assigned to a B-24, which were brand new airplanes, really, I mean, just months old, outfitted with special cameras. And they were in California. They took off on December 4th, 1941. And their mission was to fly over the Japanese Mandate Islands and take pictures. And they were absolutely told, you're going to be shot at. This is going to be a dangerous mission. But Mosliner was one of 10 men who were on this crew. They took off, they made their way, they stopped in the Aleutians, they made their way finally to Hickam Field. And I think they had just arrived at Hickam Field maybe December 5th or 6th. Oh, here's a map of this is from the Melbourne Sun in 1941. These are all the Japanese Mandate Islands, that Guam was included, and the US would end up having to fight on many of those islands. Here are the orders for the mission. Pilots should be forewarned. Pilots should be warned, islands strongly fortified. Photography and reconnaissance must be accomplished at high altitude, and there must be no circling or remaining in the vicinity. Instruct crews of attack, use all means in their power for self-preservation. Ensure that both airplanes are fully equipped with gun ammunition upon departure. Well, it turns out when the B-24 landed at Pearl Harbor at Hickam Field, it was way under armored, and there wasn't enough ammunition for the guns on the ship. And that B-24, there was only one of them at Pearl Harbor at the time, was again directly struck by a Japanese bomb in the first wave of the attacks on December 7th, 1941. And our man Mosliner was killed with another crew member. I think this is a picture of that B-24, though I'm not sure. Is it? Is that a B-24? It looks like what's left of one. Yeah, it was broken in half. And so, Jerry, I wanted to thank you for sharing that story with me. It's a really important one, and I'm embarrassed that I'd never heard it before. And I think we should remember him and honor him on December 7th. Did anybody know that story? You had known it. You guys knew it because of Jerry. That's right. Yeah, I read your name in the paper. Did you preside over as a minister?
Yeah, I had the honor of being able to be asked by Jerry down. We've gone down several times to the cemetery, and finding out the story was something that was very powerful. In fact, I think it's his cousin, Jerry. I can't remember. That's a pastor that I also served with as a pastor. And so it's just an amazing story, and something that is a reminder again that we should never forget. And how important it is to know that these people, I mean, I'm Vietnam, but these people that came before me set the example for my life. And I know I can speak, I'm sure, on behalf of the others who came after you who were in World War II. And the tremendous example you set for all of us. My dad was a victim right after the bombing. He was a mechanic with the Army Air Force. And he worked on these aircraft. And he told me the story when I was a younger person of when he arrived there and how they had taken all the aircraft, placed one in the airfield, and disarmed them for all the armament at the other end of the airfield, so that when they were hit, they were really, really at the mercy of the Japanese. So it is an honor, and I'm very thankful to Jerry. And I want to say, if I could talk, Jerry has done so much, and his wife, both William, have done so much in serving veterans and the needs of veterans. And there is so much that they do that we don't even realize that they do. And I think that it's a blessing, and it's a blessing for me to be even in the presence of Jerry, as much as we joke around with Jerry at times and so on. Really, and even though he's a Navy guy, I would say. Todd, everything you do as well. I'm thankful for that, for bringing us to a time that we have to come together like this and to recognize people of honor. I mean, the commitment that they've made, the sacrifices, is so important. And one other thing, we need to continue to tell our young people, tell them the story. You and I that are here, Todd is such a blessing in organizing this Veterans Breakfast Club, but we need to tell the story. They need to know. And so many veterans have been afraid to open up, or they just had all this bottled up in their life and they carried it with them. They need to tell their story. We need to tell our young people the history, because in this day and age in which we live, in which they're trying to cancel so much of our culture and remove the history that we have, we need to tell the truth. They need to know why we have what we have, and that we live in the greatest country on earth. And it wasn't just handed to us. The price is always been up.
History, I just thought, Rich Janicki, you have a gigantic collection of artifacts. Would you mind standing up? You have an amazing collection of artifacts and memorabilia here. I know it must be what, 1/50th of your.
What I have here is, this is all World War II. This is aviation. This is the 20th Air Force. They were the last Air Force in World War II, and they strictly flew the B-29 Superfortress. And the 20th was composed of the 58th Bomb Wing, the 73rd Bomb Wing, 313th, 314th, 315th, 316th Bomb Wing, and the 509th Composite Group, which was the atomic bomb group that dropped the atomic bomb. But I wrote to these veterans, this customer for 20-something years. And years ago, I wrote to the veterans. My brother Andy's father-in-law was a driver and a flight engineer on the B-29 73rd Bomb Wing. And I obtained his address listing when he had the reunions, and I started writing to these guys. And then it just snowballed. I started writing to other bomb groups, and all these guys. There's so much history in these albums. I finally put them together because of COVID, and I said, I got time. I better do this before I can't do it. But feel free to go through these albums. I can probably write 10 books on what's in these albums. These guys are from pilots, bomb crews, ground crews, describing their missions, the memorabilia they gave me, there's photographs, it's unbelievable amount of history here, and it should be passed on. But there's so much, there's signed pictures. I wrote all the atomic bomb crews tickets. There's just so much here that I haven't even actually read all of it myself. I just tried to put it all together, and I finally did get it in albums. And A lot of people do question, it's, why did we, shouldn't we have dropped the atomic bomb? And I think if the Germans and the Japanese were both working on an atomic bomb, and I think if they had it first, they would have bombed us. And, my father was a World War II veteran, and, he was drafted when he was 30 years old. He had 2 kids already. And he was in the 106th Division, went to Europe. When he got to Europe, the 106th was wiped out at the Battle of Bulge. There's no division left. So he put him in the 84th Division. He served in Europe, but the war ended, and the war was still going on Japan. And my dad was slated to be in the first wave of Tokyo Bay. And they figured they were going to lose 1 million men, with Japan, because the battle of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the Japanese were fanatical, and they were losing a lot of people. And my dad was slated to go to Japan, and I showed him some of this stuff when he was still alive. And he said, I said, do you ever, I'm asking about the atomic bomb. And he says, good thing they dropped that bomb. He says, because you and your other 4 brothers might have been. So he was glad with that. But like I said, there's a lot of stuff here, and these bombers were based at Tinian, Saipan, and Guam. When we took those items, they set the air bases there, and they flew to Japan and bombed Japan, and probably a 15-hour mission flying over the ocean. And it's a good thing the Marines took Iwo Jima, because it saved a lot of these air crews' lives. They were able to land at Iwo Jima instead of crashing into the ocean or whatever, because they had the counter problems coming back, running out of fuel. And some of the B-29s actually did land at Iwo while the Marines were still securing the island. So, but there's so much in here, photographs. Just take a look at it, because.
Rich, may I touch some of this stuff? Okay, I have some questions. What is this?
That's a 50 caliber round that they used in machine guns for the.
A 50 caliber round.
Now, they did have a 20 millimeter tail on some of the B-29s, but mostly it was 50 calibers.
Okay, this can do some damage.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that would hurt. That would hurt.
And that is chaff. That's
I
radar.
have never seen chaff before. I've read about it, but I've never actually seen what it looked like. Chaff.
They would drop it out to jam the radar for the Japanese. So chaff. One of the guys said that.
So it turns out radar is sensitive to aluminum foil. If you drop aluminum foil in front of a radar, it gets confused, or it picks it up.
It's like a cat.
So a good way to disguise yourself when you're flying in the air is to drop aluminum foil from your airplane. That's why during World War II, Reynolds wrap, they didn't make Reynolds wrap. It was all going into chaff. But I'd never seen the coils with strips of chaff. So this is the first time I've ever seen that. May I pick up this helmet?
Yeah, that's a flak helmet. They
Okay.
order those in the bombers to keep the place around the aircraft fire. And there's 2 types of flak helmets.
Yes.
You warm over their flight over these other flak caps.
I've just read a book about a B-24 nose gunner. We had the author on Monday night, and she was talking about her father's service. And in a very funny passage in his journal, he wrote, after his first mission, he got out as many of these as he could find and put them all over his body and sat on them, put them one under each side, one on his head. And then he finally realized that the Army steel pot helmet, the regular ground forces helmet, was way thicker than this. So he got himself one of those, and he said, I flew the rest of my missions with a regular helmet on.
See, one thing about the B-29 too, they didn't have to wear the heavy sheepskin clothing like they did the B-17s and 24s. They had a pressurized cabin.
Right.
So they didn't have to be on oxygen. It was all self-contained, So they had oxygen bottles in case they did lose pressure and stuff.
Right.
And they could put oxygen mask on or carry that on. But there's other stuff there. Survival, silk flags, the maps, they were shot down. Some of these guys, the 58 bomb wing first served in China because we didn't secure Saipan or Tinian. And the 58 flew out of China, and then when they got the other islands, Saipan and Tinian, they moved the 58 over there because flying out of China was tough. They had to fly supplies into the Himalayas and everything else. And quite a few of the Chinese guys, the guys that flew the B-29, some of them were shot down. One guy, there's a whole album on what he went through when he shot down over to China, how he got back to American lines. But those albums are filled with, there's so much memorabilia in there. There's even pieces of plaque in there that guys could off the airplane and get set. You just have to go through the albums to look. But they're numbered from A to Z, all the guys that set the items, and there's just a lot of stuff in there. A lot of history.
A lot of history. There's a lot of history laid out
Books
here.
are signed too. They sent the autograph books. Some of them did write books, and a lot of stuff is signed.
These are great. I mean, if you look at these, there's a whole stack of these. Some of you, you're nodding. You've heard of these before? You were told to study this silhouette, right?
Playing cards too.
And they were playing cards. Most 12-year-old boys in 1943 memorized these things. They were fascinated with airplanes and with flight. Every airplane manufactured around the world had a silhouette, had a unique silhouette, and your job was to memorize it. So that the minute it flew over Pittsburgh, you could recognize it and call in the Ground Observation Corps and let them know your coordinates. Does anybody remember these, kind of memorizing these? And weren't you also in World War II, you often had to learn them, learn the recognition? Gunners had to learn these. Totally fascinating. Rich, this is great stuff. Thank you so much for making the effort to bring all this out and laying it out. It's so much history. I hope many people here will have an opportunity to check. Will you be able to hang out for a few minutes after breakfast? Okay. If people have questions. Wonderful. Thank you, Rich. Jim is the founder and director of Outdoor Immersion. And I just saw it, which is a wonderful nonprofit that takes veterans out for outdoor excursions. And you want to give us an update on what's happening with Outdoor Immersions? You have a trip coming up or anything?
Yeah. Thank you very much, and we're glad you're all here. And yeah, we are. Someone just said Jim Skull, Outdoor Immersion. He's like a solo flyer. Recently, they were describing who we are, and I was able to correct her and say, nope, not any longer. I do have a board. We're a 501c3. We do faith-based outdoor adventure, recreation, and fitness for veterans. One of our guys, Jerry, sitting over there, has been out with us. So, you know, how old are you, Jerry? How old?
Oh, I passed 80.
Oh, so he's the oldest guy that we have taken out in a kayak. So if you're under his age or around his age, you still qualify. If we get you in, we'll get you out. But yeah, I've been a solo flyer basically since 2011. But about 3 months ago, combat Marine that I've grown close to over the last few months basically stepped up and said, I want to do what you're doing. And so now he's a outdoor immersion card carrying operator. And so for the first time about 3 weeks ago, we were conducting operations in 2 different parts of Pennsylvania for the first time. So we've increased our capacity 100%. We're working with veterans up into Mercer County, down into Washington County, over into Westmoreland County, and across the border into Ohio, up around Youngstown. And so if you know of anybody that would be interested in joining us just to participate, we'd love to have you. If that's any of you, I had a Vietnam veteran say, Jim, I could walk about 50 paces and I got to sit down. So I slung 2 camp chairs over my shoulder, went and picked them up. We walked into the woods about 50 paces, ended up right next to a beautiful little stream. And we sat down there and we were there for about 2.5 hours. Sometimes we're talking, sometimes we're just sitting and listening. So that's available. We'll do what we can. And if there's anyone that's interested in like conducting operations, we call them MFACs. We came up with, my Marine buddy, we came up with an acronym, right? It's proper. Everyone knows what a FAC is, right?
No, what's a FAC?
Okay, a FAC is a forward air controller. Okay. So in the Marines.
What's a forward air controller?
Okay, so my experience will tell you that when I learned about the FAC, I was riding with 2 Marines. We were going up to upstate New York to do some salmon fishing for the first time. And they were talking about their FAC. He was the best FAC there ever was. And he had a call sign that was a very, reputable call sign. And his call sign was Gretzky. And his call sign was Gretzky because he was so good at everything. He was like 6'2" and built and handsome and spoke well, educated, and he did everything perfectly and good. And so they called him Gretzky, the great one, right? Forward air controller, he was an F-18 Super Hornet pilot. And so before he would go up and conduct his operations, he was embedded with a ground unit and went on patrols with them. And he was in charge of calling in air cover if they needed it. Forward air controller. So he was talking directly to the pilots.
Right.
Because someday he was going to be up there listening to the fact who was talking to him.
Right.
So he would know what conditions were like on the ground.
Right.
Okay.
Important job.
Very important. So we came up with the acronym for operators for outdoor immersion are called MFACs. And it simply stands for Mission Facilitator. And so now we have MFAC 1, which is my buddy, and now MFAC 2 is about ready to come on, and it's a female. And that's going to help us expand and conduct operations with female veterans. So we're growing. We'd love to serve you and anybody you know. So Todd knows how to get a hold of me. I'll be around for a little bit too. Thank you for your service. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. With BBA 62, anything to announce? No? No? No.
No, but I will say, Todd, you mentioned you didn't know what a forward air controller was. And that might be a story you'd want to put together, because was there anybody else in here that was a forward air controller? Anyway, you get some from Vietnam and maybe before that, but there are some in our chapter I can link you up with. I was also, but I was up in Alaska when peacetime, 1977 to 1980. So I can talk a little bit about it, not today, but there are some, and then there's some forward air controllers who were in Vietnam and Laos under some clandestine operations that are pretty interesting. And some of you that were in the Laos, Cambodia are going to talk about. Might be a good story.
Yeah, good. All right, thank you, Larry. He deserves a round of applause.
Yeah.
How are you? You're terrible. Good start for this. You know, I've been killing time because I saw you went out to the hall for some reason. I knew you were next up, so I had to kill some time to get back. Okay. But this is a picture of you.
Yes, me and my friend Dave, right.
Are you the one on the right?
Yes, I am.
What year was this taken and where was it taken?
I have no idea what. I really don't know where it was. On the fire base.
It was a fire base in Vietnam in maybe 1965. You were there early.
65, 66.
Why? You're a Marine.
Right.
Why did you join the Marine Corps?
I had no idea.
This is going really well so far.
I spent 9 years, 3 months in the Marine Corps.
9 years, 3 months in the Marine Corps, and I know that you did 2 tours, from what I remember you telling me, correct?
There's 2 tours in Vietnam, and I just headed back to the third, and decided I didn't need it.
You decided you didn't need it. You had already gotten a Purple Heart SC from your hat.
Yes, already.
What, do you care to tell how you got the Purple Heart?
It was at a fire base, and I got shrapnel on the right side of my face, and had a corpsman that came in and took it all out. And,
Took it all out. These are pictures, do you know what they are?
yeah, one of the 60-foot rifle on the right, and my radio Jeep on the left.
Your radio Jeep. So what did you do that you had a Jeep?
I was a radio operator,
Okay.
and that was a Mark 37. And I moved up to a Mark 83, which was more powerful. And we made it around the world that way.
What happened here?
That's at Marble Mountain in Washington. That's when the people who are working on the base first lined up all the vehicles at one end, and they came in and destroyed on most of our shoppers.
So these were local South Vietnamese civilians who were employees on the base. And by night they were Viet Cong, and they came in and did this sabotage operation at night.
Exactly, that's what happened. I was all that work for things. Our farm was one of them, killed them. We had quite a few casualties, but out to the Marine Corps. I don't remember how many we killed. And there was one survivor. And the South Vietnamese army put me away. I don't ever know what happened.
Your first tour was 65, 66, I believe. And what was when was your second tour? Dennis, those were like two different wars. The war in 65, 66 was so different than 68, 69. Do you remember it being, both tours being very different from one another?
Yeah, quite a bit different. I mean, the first one I was with the air wing, and the second one I was with the artillery. And there was a lot of difference. I mean, the second one, we did a lot of damage to the artillery where we wanted in the first one.
There's more of the damage at Marble Mountain, which is now back being used for its original purpose, which is marble. You know, mining marble and creating works of art out of marble. Is this Da Nang also?
Yes, that's Marble Mountain also. There's the body cells. One of the vehicle out there. And then about
All right, Mrs. John is coming up next. So can you explain to me how these tours worked? I thought that if you had already gone to Vietnam and done a tour, you didn't have to go back. So you must have volunteered?
No, definitely not. I was in communication, and 2 years to the day when I came back, I was assigned again. And 2 years to the day, I went back to my work. I didn't want it.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you for sharing that. Another Marine, another Vietnam Marine, John Barber. Hi, John. It's been a while. How you doing? You have your dog tags. Are these yours?
55.
Are they original? Really? I see what blood type you are. I mean, I'm just curious. Okay, I'll mark that down. Yeah, what does it say for religion? Okay. Are you good Catholic?
Most of the time.
All right, we're not going. Oh, so yeah, I asked John to talk today because John is in the possession. This is another picture of John in Vietnam. Many of you have heard his story before. John is in the possession of this notebook, which belonged to a Japanese soldier or sailor on, is it Okinawa, New Guinea? Where was the notebook found? Saipan. Taken from a Japanese sailor or soldier on Saipan during World War II by a Marine and handed down to John, correct? And it is filled with this Japanese writing, which turns out most Japanese people, I would say, can't read it today. It's a classical, formal Japanese, but it's really filled in. And the only thing missing is the author's name. It turns out that the person who wrote the notebook went to great lengths, it seems, to disguise who he was. But you and I connected with a journalist. If you were at our picnic in July, you met her, Mariko Fukuyama, who is from Japan. She's a journalist here in the United States. She took a great interest in this notebook and has been doing some unbelievable detective work. Why don't you tell people about the work she's been doing?
Well, she's trying to work with the Japanese government, and they are so slow in getting information out to her.
as far as we know, he was from Yokohama or a town called Ito. And he has a sister and two brothers, or brother, two sisters, I can't remember, but the information that she's getting, she is working with trying to find the family that this book belongs to. But the Japanese are so slow to getting information out that she emails me every once in a while saying, I'm still waiting, I'm still waiting, I'm still waiting. But a friend of mine, my wife's friend, her father was in Saipan. And he found this book. And it also comes with a picture of about 100 Japanese soldiers at an artillery school. And the Japanese were losing so many people that pulled this Japanese artillery school and put him in the field. And obviously he passed away. And he's writing in some of the writings in the book saying that he's afraid if he's going to die, he won't be able to take care of his mother and father, some of his sisters, brothers. But it's so interesting that I've been trying to find this family for close to 20 years now. And when I got this book, I just threw it in my drawer. And about 3 or 4 months later, I started looking at it. And I gave it to an interpreter. And she said it's old style Japanese writing that she can't really interpret. And in the binder of the book, I still have the pencil that came with it. So we've been trying to find this family for 20-something years. I wrote to Senator Inouye when he was alive, and he told me that the Japanese people don't want to be reminded of the war, to just give it up, don't look for the family. Well, I just kept trying and trying and trying. And I finally got Mariko. And she is fantastic. She's been trying to help me with this book and trying to find a family. But right now, no good information yet. But she says it's just around the corner, and the Japanese are trying to get some information out.
Yeah, they're pretty sure they know the name. They're pretty sure they know his name. And they're certain that he's from that prefecture around Yokohama. The question is there family who would want the notebook back? That's the question that you want to confirm the author and then confirm that the family is actually interested in receiving it. You would think that they would be.
I even wrote to the Japanese embassy, and I gave them a copy of the book at the Japanese embassy, and I didn't hear nothing at all. They want me to send the book to Japan and put it in a museum, but I'd rather not do that. Just wait to see if we can find a family.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the one thing she said, like, I think what interested her in the project was she started reading it, and she recognized immediately that this soldier or sailor was highly educated and very smart. There are poems in there. There's a lot of creative writing. Very thoughtful person, and I think that intrigued her. Right.
Getting out of this story, but I want to say something about the Canadians.
Yeah.
That left the United States and went to Canada.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in Vietnam, 66, 67, I heard about them leaving. I hated it. I said, you bastards, But then after learning about the war, after years later, learning about Vietnam, and what our government did, I didn't blame them at all for leaving. Because we lost the war. We could have done so much more, but they lied to us. I can go on and on like that.
Did you know any Canadians in Vietnam?
No.
Okay.
I work with a lot of Aussie,
Yeah.
So,
South Koreans. I hear they were crazy.
yeah. They were, yeah. They were there, calisthenics at 120 degrees. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, John. You get Bob and his wife this breakfast. Is this your first time at this breakfast? I believe it is.
Yes, I normally attend the one at Robert Morris University at the dormitory.
Yeah.
At the bottom floor.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Bob is a great story because he's one of the few people I know, there are a handful I know, who served both in Vietnam, and this is a picture of Bob in Vietnam as a platoon leader.
Yeah. First, as a first lieutenant, I started off first as a support platoon leader for 5 months, and then I was given my tank platoon.
Yes, right. And also served in Iraq after 2003. You were there 2004, 2005?
Whole year of 2004.
2004. So this is where you lived when you were in Vietnam.
Well, yeah, once in a great while, that was my beach. You know, you get back to the rear area. I got one of my men to take a picture of me. But I tell you what, we usually ran like 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day. So rarely got to see the rear.
You told me, Bob, that that was the best job you ever had. I think it was the second job when you got your platoon, your tank platoon.
Oh, yeah.
You said it was the best job you ever had. And I said, how could that possibly be? You're being shot at, you're living in these bad conditions. How is that a good job?
Because of the men. I mean, it's like I told you, my most prized trophy is we, not me. I tell you what, those 19 guys that served with me, that's the best job I've ever had. Camaraderie, the esprit de corps. I mean, every guy on the team was fantastic. And we got the job done. I remember Bolton coming up to me and he said, hey, LP, how come we get the dirtiest jobs all the time? And I said, Bolton says we keep more tanks burning than any other platoon in the company. And that's a tribute to my platoon sergeant. And he stood back from me. You got to see Bolton. He's like 20 years old. If you were blonde hair, he said, keep on pushing, LP. Keep on pushing. So that became our platoon. They're just fantastic great guys. Oh.
Yeah, didn't they know how to shave though? Is this mustache? That doesn't look regulation to me.
That was in the support platoon. That's the guys in my support platoon.
Okay.
Now that's Gorp. He's my driver. He was up in Boardman, Ohio. He wound up getting wounded when he detonated a mine under the front slope of my tank. And he wound up smashing his mouth against the side of that hatch opening, so he lost a bunch of teeth. Now, I remember going to visit him once I got back from Vietnam. I talked with him and his family. I really liked the young man. And then that's my second, that's when I was with the third platoon. And that's, it's either a retreat or reveille. That's outside the battalion headquarters in Palm Tree.
Look at that red dirt. That is the red dirt of Vietnam, huh?
I tell you what, when I was up at Alpha 4, that's New Quan, and it's about 2 clicks south of that north border. And I remember looking down at the palm craters, 500-pound bomb craters, sort of all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
All the way. It was so fertile. I remember looking on the map and the French had an agricultural community right there at one time, and I just couldn't get over how lush everything.
And there are some places in Vietnam, we've done a couple trips there, and Ben Wright will remember, there are places in Vietnam where the water table is so high that if a 500-pound bomb exploded and left a crater, it would fill with water. They're perfectly circular, and they're used as dump ponds all over Vietnam today. You see them everywhere.
Wow. The last one I remember was on the Laotian border. So one of our new lieutenants threw his tank into a 500-pound ball there. Took 2 tanks and a BTR to pull him out of there. He was embarrassed. And this is like looking out from an observation port. I think that was at my walk. That was it.
I like the clothes being dried out here.
Yeah, it's amazing because right next to my walk were a lot of the mountain yards. And they were displaced from Quezon. At one time, there were 10,000 mountain yards living at Quezon, and they were displaced by the war. So they had And that's Tim. He was a mountain yard, he had 2 wives, so I'll never forget that. He worked for us, but every day he would go over to the mountain yard community. They were just encamped next to my lot. I mean, thousands of wow. And there I am with them. Yeah.
Great.
That's a picture of, I think it was a battalion commander back in our rear area. We got a chance, you can see the guys doing some preventive maintenance on the road wheels there.
You know, you don't think of, or I said, you know, I don't usually think of Vietnam as being a tank war, but there was up near the DMZ.
Yeah, I'd say the eastern half of northern Icor was ideal tank country we controlled. A lot of times I would have my tank platoon and I'd have a platoon of 1st to 61st Mechanized Infantry. They'd follow us because if we ran over a mine, you know, won't
You're dead in the water.
no, not a tank. But
No.
they take the APCs, they could flip the APCs, so guys can get hurt. So,
So hold on, if you're in a tank and you run over a mine, what happens?
well, as long as it's just a single PM30. I remember when I ran over one now, it just sounded like, whoa, you know, I lifted my tank up a little. Just, you know, tie the track off, let it back, put your track on, new road wheel,
No big deal.
no big deal. But what they started to do is double stack PM30s. And what that would do is, would actually bend the hull a little, it would combat losses. So if you ran over one, no big thing. If you ran over 2, you had a different tank.
You got to get a new tank. Okay.
You know, these are just various shots from my lot, various planes, you know, helicopters coming in. Now that's the rock pile. That's where QL9, as it's going west, takes a turn south. You start heading towards Cape Son. And it's amazing because there were apes living in one. Yeah, you know, that some guys said, right at the top, they said, it didn't feel like venturing down the sides because of the apes.
There was a Marine base on top, a very top, a very, very narrow platform that they would drop and resupply. I looking at John Barber and I could tell the hair on the back of his neck is standing up. Just a picture of the rock pile. Very dangerous place during the Vietnam War. What is that you're cooking?
One day, one of the small Vietnamese deer got in the way of a 7.62 coaxially mounted machine gun. My men shot him, and it sort of beat eating sea grasses for so many straight months. You know, fresh venison. The deers, they're only about 2 feet tall. He didn't stand a chance. So, oh, guys, we're so happy to eat that sea rats.
Good. I'm glad that it's actually a deer and not something worse.
That's my tank after I ran over my 109. My tank was appropriately named Achilles. Remember Achilles' heel in the Trojan War? And so you can see it blew it off. That's in the officers' club. Some artists took a Playboy Center for their oil. They put it up there. So, and these 2 young ladies were my hooch mates when I come back to the rear. Really nice young ladies. I gave them a bunch of stuff. Radios and clocks and covers. You know, they were very helpful. I mean, oh God, we come back and they wash the clothes, stuff like that.
There are a lot of raised eyebrows in the room right now, so we'll just go right ahead. 2004, this is Iraq?
Yes, this is one of the villas that Saddam Hussein, I guess you'd say, gave to some of his loyalists. I tell you what, these places were really nice, and then that's at Camp Victory, just outside of Baghdad, and very, how should I say? I mean, the marble, tile floors, everything. Anybody that was at party associated with it, the one palace was there, and you know, everything's just magnificent. But you know, he gave to his followers.
Now, so you rejoined the military? You were, did you?
What happened is I bumped into the lieutenant colonel and said, hey, there's so many more years back on that. You know, I'm doing it. Oh, 2 more. He said, you gotta get in before you turn 60. Because it'd be mandatory. So I got back in just in the last 2 years. A year later, I'm in Iraq after 9/11. Yeah.
So you think you're gonna do just 2 years in National Guard?
In Army Reserve.
Army Reserve.
Yeah, I had the easiest job I ever had that first year. Because I was supposed to go into logistics and they assigned me to the JAG. And I mean, my field gear was a laptop and 2 CDs, you know, the UCA kit. That was my field gear, not but the old computer comes around and says, hey, he's got these combat MLSs, transfer them to combat engineers, and he's going over. And I remember my wife saying, they can't do this. Yeah, served in Vietnam. And I said, that doesn't matter. I said, once that you sign on a dotted line, you know, you go where Uncle Sugar wants to send you, you know, FDA on travel with adventure.
Fun travel and adventure at age 58.
Yeah, I was 58 when I came back. You know, I turned 58. But there were 7 Vietnam veterans in my unit. Sergeant Dow turned 59, I turned 58. You know, most of us were our 50s. Look there, look there. That's the way it was. You know?
That's a great bum ring, by the way. And so they called you like grandpa, I take it, right?
No.
No?
The only thing is, I remember this one time, oh, that's the one palace, I forgot. I think that's the East Palace at Saddam Hussein, because he would move from palace to palace. Because the Air Force would bomb various palaces. You might see some of the pictures, and they didn't. Oh, there's this drum, I got to sit on that. You know, that's 24 karat gold in, so your people are suffering, you know, right. I need this more than they need. You know, he was something else. But, yeah, I remember this one kid, another blonde kid, he walks up and he says, what are you old guys doing here? And I looked at him, I said, teaching young guys how to fun. And I'm like, looking at him, real serious in his eyes, get big, and then I just smiled. That broke the code. Because he asked me, because I had a dynamite. Oh, you served in Grenada. I said, no, before that. What do you mean before that? I said, I was with the 1st or 5th Mech in Vietnam. Oh my God. You're old. These are different locations on that East Coast. That's that time I was in Major Lara and Chief Radio in my section. I just took a picture of him while we're at the palace. You can see where the bombs, the Air Force hit the causeway coming to the palace, but they never bombed. They intentionally, I guess, sent a message to Saddam that we're coming after him. Right. You know, so he literally would never stay in the same place overnight. He would just, you know, those are some of the other villas surrounding the main palace. Like I said, he was very benevolent to his that part of that province. Right. Really nice place. That's inside the palace, the huge crystal chandelier. Very lavish. I mean, oh my goodness gracious. And then you'd see how poor some of the Iraqis were. You know, they come around, collect their garbage and stuff. I saw them eating food. There are guys throwing the garbage out of the garbage. Right. You know, and you see that. And I remember experiencing that in Allentown when I was in the jungle school before Vietnam. You see the poverty in other countries when you come back to the United States. You are so appreciative of what we have here. Right. You know, it's the old number history processing culture shock. Right. Right. And it is so true. You know, oh, how some people subsist in other countries. And then you look at the people in power. Yeah. Living like the kings and queens of lore. Right. Right. You know, and they don't give a damn about their citizens. They really don't. And I really appreciate that what our founding fathers did with that Constitution. I mean, I remember the one Iraqi guy. We were talking, and he used to sell us things. We were ordered to spend $10,000 cash a month in Iraq. And he came up one time, and I asked him, I said, what's the difference between you and the other Shia? He said, well, when Mohammed died, we followed one son, they followed the other one. We've been at each other's throats since then. And when you Americans leave, we're going back at it. Right. And I'm going, what the hell are we doing? And so he asked me, he says, I don't understand you Americans, you know, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different religious, different political, different racial. And I said, well, the Japanese found out in World War II when they bombed us. Don't ever threaten our freedom. That is the glue that holds America together. I mean, I may disagree with you, we may argue, I can get in a fisticuffs, but don't ever threaten. You know, I mean, and I think he prize that more than anything else. And I'll never forget the expression on his face. He's looking at me, and the smile goes across his face, and he says, "Now I understand." You know, now I'll never forget that experience. And it's like what just transpired in Afghanistan. We never understood their culture. And, you know, the warlord thing, we never exploited the warlords. And, you know, put all our faith in some corrupt central government, like, you know, Saddam said, instead of personal opinion.
Right. Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. What do we have, George? About 10:30? 25 after, and I just want to let people know, we have several World War II veterans with us. We have Warren Goss here, we have Jack Morrow, we have Robert Buckley, we have Guy Prestia with us, we have Vince Proya with us. Vince, we talked a little bit with you before. Can you say, just when we just have a couple minutes left, I thought I'd have people know a little bit about your service. You served on a tanker ship in World War II?
No, not in World War II, during the Korean War.
Oh, okay, World War II, let's start there, South Pacific. What ship did you serve on?
I didn't serve on ship, I served on the USS Hornet blockade was out there. I was transported there by the USS Hornet.
Oh, okay, so you were transported by the Hornet, which is now at Alameda, California. And you were then dropped off at Saipan. What was your job on Saipan?
On Saipan, I was with the 121st Naval Construction Battalion. Seabee.
You were a CB.
Seabee.
Whoa. How much money did you win playing cards?
I never played cards.
Okay, good. Good. How did you end up in the Seabees?
Well, they were forming a battalion Seabee, and when I was in boot camp, and they said every other guy step out. So I stepped out. Ended up on a train going across country. I got to a trade route, and they shipped out on the Hornet to go to Saipan and Mariana Island.
Oh man, that is what. So you were there, I guess, maintaining airfields or docks, or what were you doing?
They're ducking, right?
And so in Korea, were you a CB also in Korea?
No.
No.
I was also in Alaska too.
What was Alaska like after World War II?
It had a lot of junk on the beach. Two-man submarine and stuff like that was big old. But that was the only place that they got the Japanese, the American mainland with Alaska.
That's right.
Yeah, well, we were with I served on a USS Tillamook. It was not a big barges.
A tugboat, a seagoing tug?
Yeah, well, only this wasn't as big as a fleet. Seagoing tug. We gave the British, and the British didn't like them until they came back out. And they were real blunt bows. It wasn't struck. And every time we had to go somewhere, we had to call the icebreaker, the East Wind, Coast Guard. They come out, break us a path, and then we'd be able to go somewhere.
Wow, that's slow going.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to go from, we were stationed in Kodiak. So we used to go from Kodiak up to Dutch Harbor, Ketchikan, and back again. With all the supplies. And that was during 1947, 48.
Just when the U.S. was really building up the illusions for the Cold War, because it was such a good place to observe what the Russians were doing.
That's funny about that. You say that, but we went up to Point Barrow, which is very cold up there. And we'd be going up one side, and the Russian fishing boat would be looking down the other side. And hey, comrade. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
observing each other.
Oh, yeah, but every time we go, they stayed on their own side, but that was Russian. And on this side was the United States. So we'd be going this way, they'd be coming up for it.
Thank you so much, Vince, for coming. Thank you, Rich, for bringing Vince. I hope to see you again. We're going to do a special Saturday event on Saturday, November 20th, right? November 20th, the week before Thanksgiving, I believe, right? The Saturday before Thanksgiving. We're going to be here. I hope you can make it. I know we have the 50-50. Yeah. Here. I did not mention the display. Let me mention the display before we go to the 50-50. This is a display that Jerry and Lydian brought. And I brought some also. These are, Jerry created these tributes to the 13 servicemen and women who were killed in Afghanistan with a bomb explosion on August 26th. There were 10 Marines, 2 Navy, two sailors, and 1 Army?
1 Navy, 1 Army. and 11 Marines.
Okay, 1 Navy, 1 Army, and 11 Marines.
The other 5 were the helicopter.
Okay. Oh, okay. Then there are the 5 who were killed in helicopters. And I would just encourage you to, look at their pictures, check out their names, check out their ages. 5 of those killed on August 26th were 20 years old. 20 years old. Think about you at 20 years old. Each of these people had a family. They had parents and siblings. They had likes and dislikes. They had things that set them off. They had things that made them laugh. They were real people and not just statistics. And they're the latest who have died in the global war on terror. And we just thought it would be appropriate, so close to the day that they died, that we would pay tribute to them here. Thank you, Jerry, for bringing this material. Glenn, how's we do with the 50-50?
Okay, we have time for last call.
Last call, sure.
Last call, anybody else 50-50? One once. Twice, 3 times. Okay, we have, hold this in. $107, and we have one of the World War II books.
Oh, God, Grecia, we haven't.
Guy.
Yes, Guy is our senior veteran. Guy is 99 years old.
Whoa. The number is 594.
Yes.
954.
554. Carol Silver. Wonderful. Congratulations. This Saturday, November 20th here. Many of you who come to our events know this already, but if you haven't given me photos of yourself in the service, please do bring them to the event. And I just take pictures of your pictures. In fact, Warren Goss here brought pictures on his phone. I took pictures. First of all, it's impressive that Warren is using a smartphone. I like it, Warren. I took pictures of the pictures on his phone, and I'll be showing them and having them talk about that. So please do, if you are a veteran and you have photos of yourself in the service, bring them. I'd love to show them. Donate it back. Thank you so much, Carol. We like to end with God Bless America.
You believe it?
I can lead it, or Jerry could lead it. Jerry, would you like to lead us in God Bless America?
Well, Kate Smith was a lot better.
Hard to get.
Please share with me. God bless America. the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home.
Ellie, you still with us?
I am.